Okay, it's 6 o'clock, and let's call this meeting to order. Bob, if we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everybody rise, please, and the flag is right behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
Thank you. Okay, Jamie, if you want to do a roll call, please.
Yeah. Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Mr. Jones? Here. Mr. Mead?
Here.
Ms. Merkler?
Here.
Ms. Ratburn? Here. Vice Chair Wolf?
Yes.
And Chair Elfman?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any discussion? Any changes? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, looks like unanimous approval. So, as we get started, each member of the public that wishes to speak after each item is presented and discussed by the board will have 3 minutes per item. Representatives of association and groups will have 5 minutes. Jamie, if we could swear in anybody who's speaking.
Anyone wishing to speak, please stand and raise your right hand. All right. Do you swear or affirm any testimony given this public hearing will be truthful and accurate? Thank you.
Thank you. And let's call our first case. Case number BOA 241-20001, 720 Isle of Palms Drive. And hello, Andrew. If you could just reiterate your name and take it from there.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. Andrew Shine, here representing the property owner.
And I'm sorry, Andrew, before you go, and I do forget this sometimes, I'm going to ask for disclosures. So let's go down from right to left. Amy?
I drove by the property and I spoke with counsel.
Milton? Doug? Okay, Bob?
A brief discussion with council.
Okay, Jason?
Nope.
And Pat? Okay, and I had a site visit and spoke to council. So, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Good evening. So the property is located at 720 Isle of Palms Drive, and this case had been in front of the board a couple of months ago. We had a surveying issue. So we're back, and we have all of the accurate data right now. This is a far aerial of the property. And this is the pergola in question. So there are 5 different variances on the agenda today. There are 2 different issues. The first 2 variances are just for old surveying discrepancies. The house itself on an old survey was shown at 1 setback, and when we got the new survey for this variance application, we noticed that the setback was off by just a couple of inches. Whether the old one is correct or the new one is correct, we'd have to get a 3rd surveyor to opine on that. But the first 2 are just cleaning up old surveying discrepancies. So that's for the overall house. Nothing is moving. Nothing has moved since the house was originally built. And the remaining 3 variances are for this pergola in the rear. One of them is a rear setback variance. One is a side setback variance, and the other is a variance for the area of it. This is a picture of the pergola. So brief history. Ms. Quarterman purchased the house in 2021, and in 2023 she was diagnosed with, sorry, I do not know what's going on with the technology right now. In 2023 she was diagnosed with skin cancer just a couple years after purchasing the house. The backyard was very open at that time. There were no shading devices, so she decided to put in a shading device to be able to enjoy her backyard that she had just purchased. That was in September of 2023. Pergola installed shortly thereafter. Sorry, it's not clicking very well. Nope. Ooh. It's working now, I guess. I do have a hard copy presentation if I need to make one. Can I use that? Okay. Sorry about that, folks. All right. So to the first 2 variance requests, this is the old survey you can see in red. That's the west setback, the front setback. This is the setback that was shown on the original final survey above 25 feet, and you can see the north setback was shown above 10 feet. It's these two here. And this is from the new survey that we got for this variance application. It shows the front setback a little bit smaller than 25 feet and the north setback a little bit smaller than 10 feet. But again, these are the original setbacks. The house has not moved. So we just included this in here as, frankly, a cleanup item. You can see this is from when the house was originally built, and the house today hasn't moved. On to the rear yard setback. The rear yard setback is measured differently when you're adjacent to a waterway. And this is the section of the code. So this is for freestanding shade structures, and I highlighted the applicable part. That when you're adjacent to a waterway, it shall be no closer than 10 feet from the waterway as measured in accordance with section 4722.R. If you go down and see the bottom of this screen, that is 47.2.R, which is not an applicable code section. So this is just an aside, but there is an incorrect code reference in the code, at least in Municode, which cites to the incorrect code section. So one could read this and think this means 10 feet from the waterway, not 10 feet from the waterway as defined differently in that code section. So again, incorrect citation. The correct measurement is 10 feet from the wet face of the seawall. So where one might think the waterway begins and ends, it could be at the end of a dock. People move their seawall in and out. You can get a permit to expand your seawall, which would change this measurement. But it's not from the actual water. It's from the wet face of the seawall, which is important here. So this is an excerpt from the survey. And you can see in blue is the setback from where our surveyor still has labeled the approximate edge of water. This is not the wet face of the seawall, though. That is the edge of the dock. In the orange, it's measured 8.58 feet from the property line. So they have the edge of the dock, then the dock itself, and it's still you're not at the property line. So the property line is even further in. 8.58 to the property line, and 2.9 feet from the wet face of the seawall. So there's not much room back here at all for any shade structure, or at least any reasonable, usable shade structure, just because of how far that wet face is from the property line and from the water, the edge of the dock. As for the side yard setback, which is in a magenta color, the countertop of this was built flush with the side yard of the house, so it's only the covering of the pergola that extends over. The actual physical structure on the ground is flush with the side yard of the house. This is a letter from Ms. Quarterman's doctor, just explaining the need for a shade structure and the need to not be in the sun in the backyard. As for the variance criteria, I did go into this in the narrative, but I'll go over briefly just a few of the major points. The surveying discrepancy is a pretty special circumstance. She bought this house was built not too long ago. It's in the early 2010s. So to have a surveying discrepancy of the actual main structure of the house itself is very odd. And she should not be punished for, whether the old surveyor was correct or the new one. The incorrect cross-references in the code are also a pretty special circumstance. When the code says 10 feet from the waterway, and then gives you to another code section, and that code section does not give you any further insight into what the definition is, and that's not a mistake of the property owner. That's a mistake of the city at the end of the day. So when the pergola is actually built, more than 10 feet from the edge of the dock, and it still doesn't meet code, it's essentially not fair. And then Mrs. Quarterman's skin cancer hardship is the need for the pergola overall, and the need for just a shade structure in the backyard, so that she can use her backyard, and that's through no fault of her own. These are just pictures from up and down the waterway. Shade structures are not uncommon here. From the water, you frankly cannot tell what's 2 feet this way, 10 feet that way. Here are a couple of photos just from up and down the waterway. And you can see this is the Miss Quarterman's. We got three in the row. We got Mrs. Quarterman's on the left, our neighbor to the north in the middle, and then on the right. You can't really tell the difference from the waterway. So it's not really a harm to the waterway or a harm to the neighborhood. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open up the public hearing, Jamie, I don't believe that I had you swear anybody in. We did that?
Yes, you did.
Okay, then my mind has been in the sun too long today. Sorry about that. So in that case, I open the public hearing. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this matter? Okay. Please come up and state your name in relation to the property.
We are the neighbor to the north.
Okay, and if you could please state your name.
I'm
and
George
your property
Eustace. This is Mary Ann Eustace.
And if you could please state your property address.
710 Isle of Palms.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Well, I just, without getting involved in the, I just want to correct a couple of things. One, there is no problem with where the property line is addressed. The problem is trying to be made us to believe that the end of the dock is the property line, and then whoever it was that built this didn't make the judgment that the real property line is a seawall. Number two, had there been a permit applied for, this plan would never have been approved because, number one, it's 4.5 feet where it needs to be 10 feet. It's 7.5 feet where it needs to be 10 feet.
For the rear yard.
For the rear yard. So consequently, then the other thing is it's 324 square feet.
The pergola, the freestanding structure is 324 square feet, where 200 is the maximum that's written in.
Yes, and by the way, when you're going to speak, if you could get to the microphone as well, because we have to record this.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So you could transfer back and forth if two are together.
Okay. Did you get all that, or should I just review it?
We got that, Jamie?
Okay.
Okay.
And do you want to bring this up?
Yeah. There's another freestanding structure in the rear yard that's not been addressed at all. And I don't know if it requires a permit or if anyone had ever applied for a permit, but I do know it's there. And it's not small. I mean, I've not been in this yard to measure it, but you know, it's. I've sent a photo to each of the board members that showed it, and hopefully it's big, large enough that you can see it's there.
So, I just think that, you know, these are very large variance requests. A side yard variance of 4.78 feet, rear yard variance of 7.1, and the square footage of the size of this structure is 124 square feet variance. And those are large variances that impacts our privacy, enjoyment, and the value of our home.
The other, and the idea that this whole thing was a result of a diagnosis of skin cancer. I'd just like you all to know, I am a survivor of stage 4 metastatic malignant melanoma. So I know about it, but I've never built anything without applying for a permit.
So on the ending, you oppose?
We oppose and we ask you,
Yes.
we ask you respectfully, you can't approve this. This is why cities have building codes, cities have zoning ordinances, and cities require permits. And without any of those, I don't see how you could approve this. There's just no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public wishing to speak on this matter? Okay, seeing none, Andrew, I'm going to have you come back up if there's any rebuttal and questions from the board.
Any questions first?
We'll start right from questions. Anybody have Pat? Go ahead.
Yep, of course. Andrew, it was interesting that you didn't talk about the size, really, or I may have missed it, but that point was well taken by the neighbors that it's 200 square feet is, or whatever is permitted, and this is 324. What's the justification for that?
So I believe it's a limit of 200 square feet in the rear yard. So when you're within the rear yard setback, you're limited to that 200 square feet for that portion that's in that rear yard. So you can be larger than 200 square feet normally if you're not fully within that rear yard. So it's that's not an egregious size for a shade structure at the end of the day.
Right, but at the end of the day, you have to have a hardship, and the hardship is that you wanted a bigger pergola, and you wanted to have an outdoor kitchen in it, and it's bigger than it's supposed to be. So what's the hardship for?
It's more related to the rear yard. So let's see how I can explain this. So 324 square feet, I'll just say, is not an egregious size of a shade structure. It's
Well, the ULDR thinks it is.
It's, no. The ULDR thinks it is when it's in the rear yard. So you can a 300. Let's just say 300. A 300 square foot shade structure is normal. When that is when a portion of it is in the rear yard, that portion is limited to 200 square feet.
But this is all in the rear yard.
Correct, but it's not that the variance that we're requesting for the shade structure means we're asking for a very large shade structure. It means that we're really asking it's the variance that we're asking for the rear yard that's the driver of this here.
Right, but you're still asking. I mean, if the criteria is that it needs to be 200 feet if it's in the rear yard, and admittedly this is in the rear yard, it's 124 square feet bigger than the code permits.
Correct,
So-
because of where of how the rear yard works here. Essentially, 100% of this is located within the rear yard, rather than a shade structure that might normally 30% be located within the rear yard.
I appreciate that, but in order to grant a variance, and this gentleman was his history is such, and I really don't want to go there. I don't know what anybody's medical history is, but skin cancer is not a unique or special circumstance. A lot of people have it, and if this was so that she could sit out by her pool and enjoy her pool or something in the shade and not be in the sun, that might be something different. That would be the purpose of the shade structure. But this is for the outdoor kitchen, and it's 124 square feet bigger than it's supposed to be. And I just haven't heard you articulate what the hardship for that is.
I can't explain it other than it's related. It's not a standalone variance request. It's related to the request for the rear yard.
Okay. All right. Amy and then Doug. Amy?
I was just asking about the other structure. Is that something that's
I've been
been
in that
permitted,
backyard a
or-
couple times, and I'm not aware of any other shade structure in the backyard there.
okay?
I don't know what was being referenced. Is there I heard a picture was referenced. I haven't seen this picture.
That's all right. So is that satisfactory for now, Amy? Yeah. Okay, Doug?
Okay.
The
Chair,
code,
Yes.
to the point, I think the neighbors testified to the fact that an email was sent or pictures were
There
sent
was
to
an
you.
email that was sent.
Council has just indicated on the record that he has not seen the photograph or the email. Can we have that produced for them?
We can. Shagila, do you want to bring that up? And while she's doing that, I'll still go to Doug and we can go back. So, Doug?
Okay. In your code section, it states that a freestanding structure has to be open on all sides. This has a very big wall on one side, which also falls within the 10-foot that we're not allowed to have a fence, but you didn't mention that either. So it doesn't really even qualify as a shade structure because you have a wall.
I don't think the city considers that enclosed, but I don't think the city considers that an enclosed structure.
I can't walk through it.
I understand that. I'll let the city opine. There are a lot of problems if that's an enclosed structure.
Bird, it sounds like you would like to add? Or Mohammed? Or both? Okay, it looks like they're going to come up with an answer for you, Doug.
So I guess we would consider that closed, that it wouldn't be an open side, but it isn't part of the variance.
Does that answer your question?
I think it might complicate this if this is not a freestanding shade
It
structure
just
at
doesn't
all.
seem like it qualifies as a freestanding structure by the fact that freestanding structures have 4 posts and a roof. This has a lot more than that. This has a wall I can't walk through, which makes it, to me, not a freestanding structure anymore. I don't know what you would call it, but it seems like it's more than just calling it, you know.
I know it's an interesting thought. If it's not a freestanding shade structure, then it's not subject to those requirements to begin with.
If it's not a freestanding shade structure, it's not permitted there, period. So it makes it worse.
Well, unless this can be considered something else. But
An auxiliary building. I mean, I don't,
Hey, D. Wayne, question for you. While we're waiting, I know they're waiting for the email to come up. Is it okay to be able to receive a photo that we could keep from the neighbor?
I think the neighbor has.
Would that be
Has a
acceptable if we
photo
could
that
keep the
we
photo?
can-
Yes, as long as they're aware that that becomes a part of the record, and
Okay,
they don't.
so that means
get
that we
to-
would get it afterwards, but
No, that they don't. That it's not returned to them. Once they submit it, it becomes a part of the record, the official record here.
okay.
You have a problem with
But
that?
if you could give it, you could hand it to me and I'll pass it around, or you could, you know what, start with Amy over there.
Yeah.
And we can pass it down.
A real good picture, but
It's okay, we'll take a look at what we have.
Start here. Start with her, so she can review it.
This is the roof of the structure that's at the other end of the yard.
And Andrew, we'll let you see that as well.
When I sent the email, I sent that photo. Even
Can I ask a question?
The
of
photo
staff?
doesn't show
Do we
another
have a permit for any of this? Was any of this permitted?
pergola, kitchen,
So,
anything.
so, but with reference to this, you're talking about the structure
Yes.
that is a part of the packet. I just want
no,
clarification
no.
for the record.
Anything permitted
Permitted.
before it was built? The pergola, the kitchen, any of this improvement, was there a permit when they built it?
We're talking about the pergola and the outdoor kitchen.
Yes.
No, it's after the fact.
It's after the fact, okay.
That's okay, sir, we'll figure it through. Thank you, though. Appreciate it. We'll need to keep this picture for reference as well.
if you can see, this is it.
This right here?
So that's there.
Andrew, I'll show it to you as well.
I think that's an outdoor kennel that they're referring to, I believe.
Outdoor what?
Kennel.
Kennel?
And it's going to be to the left. The reference point.
Kennel. You put animals in it? House boys?
You could give it to Jason there. You're already on vacation, apparently.
So I'm sorry, Chair.
Yes.
And procedurally, just to go back, when you made your board disclosures, did the board disclose the email that was received?
We did not.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of causing part of the problem here in the quasi-judicial process. The applicant is entitled to hear and be aware of all evidence that the board is considering in their decision. This is pretty substantial, having this email. According to staff, it was sent to us, but staff did not send it out to the board. But the board apparently received it directly from the neighbors. So if we can restate your disclosures, and if there's any other emails or communications.
Let's restate
at the board.
disclosure, if we can. Jamie, I'll let you go down the line for restating. We'll start with Milton as far as, start with Amy as far as disclosures again,
Okay.
just because there
Do you
may
want
be
me
an edit.
to ask them individually, you mean?
Yeah.
Ms. Burglar, can
Are we going over
disclosures,
all
please?
of our disclosures? Or just
Yes.
adding?
We could go over all disclosure again, so it's
Okay,
complete.
I spoke with council, I drove by the property, and I did receive an email from the neighbors.
Mr. Jones?
I don't have any.
None.
Doug?
Mr. Mead? None.
Okay. I will state to myself that I had received an email. I only looked briefly, and I did not see any attachments.
Mr. Wolf?
Bob?
I don't recall receiving it because I didn't go through all my emails. I've been just skipping through them.
Yep. Jason?
Yeah, no disclosures, no email.
Pat?
I saw an email with a headline on it that said Board of Adjustment, so I immediately deleted it. So I don't know whether it was on this item or another item because I don't ever open them if they say anything about
That's
the Board
fine. You
of
don't have to
Adjustment.
disclose if you didn't read.
Yeah, I didn't open it, didn't read it.
Okay. Where are we at with the picture? Pat, is that in your possession, or is it moved to set? Okay. And I'd like Andrew to get a copy of it to see what we're referring to.
It's interesting, but I don't think it has anything to do with what we're here tonight on. So I don't think we should spend a lot of time trying to figure out if there is or if there isn't, whatever that thing is. I don't think it's part of what we're here to discuss.
That's the dog kennel.
At the dog kennel?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So any other questions of the applicant's counsel? Okay.
I did
Any
want
last-
to make one point in rebuttal. One of the neighbors stated that the property line is the seawall, and if that were the case, we wouldn't really be having as much of an issue here, and that's why these properties on this. I don't know if it's every block. I know it's this block of properties, but hold on, let me. If the edge of the seawall were our property line, we could probably fit a shade structure back there. But the edge of the seawall is not the property line. The property line is about 6 or so feet outside of the seawall is about 6 or so feet inside of the property line. No, the seawall is inside of the property line by about 6 feet. That's why we're here.
Actually, excuse me.
Yeah, that's why we're here. If it weren't true, we wouldn't be really having an issue. We would only be off by a foot and change. So that is truly a hardship because you were not measuring from the property line.
Right, but there's many places in the city where the property line is 25 feet into the water. The seawall is still the line.
Where the property line is, yeah.
We have that all around the city. You own half the water.
Yeah.
You can't build out there. The rule is the wet wall.
Yeah, that's correct, and it's a big problem on a lot of marine advisory board applications because a lot of times you are measuring from the wet face instead of the property line, so you can't go out as far in certain circumstances. The marine advisory board has their own procedures for those waivers, and they go to the city commission. And yeah, those waivers get approved all the time when there are those circumstances. So yes, that is the case. There are other remedies when those types of issues come up. They're granted constantly. But the remedy for this type of issue is Board of Adjustment. So, but yes, absolutely. It's all around the city.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you, Andrew. Let's bring it back to the board for any discussion or for a motion.
Are you ready for a motion?
I am, Pat.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion with respect to the dimensional requirement variances requested. So I'll break those out. And that's the one to allow the existing 24.43 front yard setback to remain where 25 is required, and the second one to allow side yard setback of 9.10 where the ULDR requires 10 feet. Those are both in the front of the property, and they were existing, and I agree that this was to clear up a surveying discrepancy, and nothing's changed, nothing's been built. So I'd like to make a motion to grant those two variance requests as they meet the criteria of the Board of Adjustment.
Second.
Okay. So when you say those two variance requests, you're talking about on 47.5?
Well, I don't want to say 47-530 because
You're doing the
because
two and not
there's
the
a third one under there, and so I
Okay.
do not want to reference that. I would prefer it, and I would prefer to reference them by the two distances.
Okay,
If
just want to
that's
clarify.
because I don't want there to be any confusion that I'm suggesting that the third one should be granted.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Clarifying that this approval is only for the existing house. It doesn't go with the lot or the land. It's only for what is currently standing, correct? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, Jamie, let's make a motion. Take account.
I just want to clarify that you're talking about the first two out of three under 47-530.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Margler?
Yes.
Ms. Rathburn? Yes. Vice Chair Wolf?
Yes.
And Chair Elfman?
Yes.
Passed 7-0.
Okay. So for the third request, Beth, did you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. And I can break it down. They all relate to the shade structure, so I think it's appropriate to hear them, to put them all into the same. I mean, Dwayne, do you have any strong feelings on that?
I don't.
Okay. Therefore, I'd like to make a motion to approve. Well, actually, I like to make them in the positive, but I'm going to make this one in the negative, just so there's no confusion as to where I'm going. I'd like to make a motion to deny the request for a variance to allow an existing straight structure to remain at a yard setback of 5.22, where the ULDR requires 5.30. 10-foot setback. Progressing to remain at side yard setback of 5.22, where it requires a 10-foot side yard setback, and also denying the request for a variance from 47-19.2P freestanding shade structures to allow this shade structure to remain 2.9 feet into the rear yard setback, and denying the request to allow the shade structure to be 324 square feet when 200 square feet is permitted.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second.
I'm sorry, and,
Yes.
and the reason for my motion in the negative is that I don't believe that they've met the hardship requirement or the other provisions of the code.
Thank you, Pat. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay.
And this is to deny all remaining three variance requests.
Yes. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, and a yes vote is to deny, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
When our board denies a variance on that issue, when the applicant has already gone out and built those structures, what happens?
Taken down unless I'm incorrect, Wayne.
That's correct. It would have to remove the structure.
Well, I mean, but I mean, how are they forced to do it?
That's going to be up to them to figure out.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I guess how is our opinion enforced to have that removed?
I mean, they've requested
is it
the permit.
Judicial
Their permit is denied, and then it goes to code enforcement.
code enforcement, or how does that?
So code enforcement already has a code case on it.
Okay.
There's an existing code case already. So it's being covered. So if the variance gets denied tonight, then that code case will go to the special magistrate they'll explain to special magistrate that the variance was denied, and then special magistrate will probably tell them that it has to be removed, or it could be made smaller so it does comply with the code. If it was made smaller, she would still have the shading, but it might be far enough away from the side yard and from the rear yard that they could still keep it. I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor, so any other questions? If not, Jamie, if we could roll call the question.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Margler?
Yes.
Ms. Rathburn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wolf?
Yes.
And Chair Elfman?
Yes.
Pass 7-0 to deny.
Thank you. Okay, the next case, and Andrew, don't go too far. It's going to be
Staying
case
right
number 250-30001, 1739 Northeast 18th Avenue. Let's start with disclosures. Amy?
I drove by and I spoke with counsel.
Okay. Milton? Okay. Doug?
Don't have any.
Bob?
Don't believe I had any.
Okay. Jason?
None.
Disclosure? Pat?
No.
And I did a site visit and spoke to counsel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the same conversation I had with counsel on the previous one, he mentioned this, and we didn't talk about it.
Okay.
But
So, whenever you're ready, Andrew.
Getting set up. Good evening, Chair, members of the board. Andrew Shine representing the property owner. And with me, I also have Chuck Farrell, who is the property owner in the audience. All right, the property is located 1739 Northeast 18th Avenue. This is the far aerial. You can see Federal Highway on the right. This is a close-up. And this is the carport in question today. The carport was installed approximately 12 or 13 years ago, installed very professionally. There have been no issues with this carport since it was installed, either structurally or with the neighbors. And a new code enforcement officer, I guess, was driving by the property and saw this, did the research, and saw that the permit wasn't obtained 13 years ago for it. So that's why we're here tonight. It's from a code violation. The carport has to be 25 feet from the property line under the code. You can't really tell here where the property line is. There's a very large area between the street and the property line on this block. It's about 34 or so feet from the edge of the street, but it does encroach into the required front yard area. You can also see that this is the driveway for the cars here are in one of the areas on the property the only areas that doesn't get shade. So that's why the carport was originally installed, of course, was to protect vehicles. The house is an older house where there's not enough room for a garage and not enough room for a carport, at least within the code. So it was built in that time where people weren't building garages into the house. But they also weren't building, at a 25-foot front setback, setback to setback. So he has the benefit of a large front yard, but not large enough to screen the cars. This is the aerial of the property again, and part of why this application is unique is that Mr. Farrell did his due diligence, and we have 26 letters of support. Now I understand it's 27 letters of support from all of the neighbors. So the immediately impacted neighbors are either all in support or don't care. And you can tell Mr. Farrell has a pretty good reputation around the block because we, all up and down the street, we do have letters of support. So I do have originals here, which I'd like to submit into the record. I can just give you all those. Oops, sorry, just that one. And that's essentially. Ooh, here's a copy of most of the letters. And that's essentially the application. Again, most people are able to enjoy at least some form of a carport or a garage. It gets hot here over the summer, beating down on cars. We've all been there. And Mr. Farrell just wants to be able to keep his cars safe. Thank you.
thank
with that in mind, I'll open up to any member of the public that wishes to speak, which is one person. Do you wish to speak, or we'll leave it with Andrew? Thank you. In that case, we're going to bring it back to the board. Any questions of the applicant? Bob, your light is lit. Is there a question or no? Okay. Okay, everybody's lights went off. Any questions, any comments, any motions?
Comment?
You could put it on and go ahead.
Okay, just comment. I just think that it doesn't interfere with anything. It doesn't obstruct, and it fits in the neighborhood. I would not have a problem with it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that has any comments, or will entertain a motion? And if there's no other comments of the applicant, let me close the public hearing, and then in that case, we'll close the public hearing, and let's make a motion if we have one. Go ahead, Jason.
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve the two variances noted under 47-5.31 for this application, that it meets the requirements for hardship.
Okay, motion is second. Any discussion? Okay, it's on you, Jamie.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Ms. Merkler?
Yes.
Ms. Ratburn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
And Chair Elfman?
Yes, motion passes.
Passed 7-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Before we go, does anybody have anything for the good of the city? Any communication to the commission? And I just want to make sure that we did note that alternate was here in attendance, just because he wasn't called on. And if there is nothing else, then in that case we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.